Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Liam Payne, LP1. Liam Payne is an English singer, songwriter, 1/5 of pop boy band phenomenon One Direction. It's been quite a while since I last talked about Liam on the channel, with the last time being his debut EP, First Time, which, if you're curious, there will be a link in the corner for you to go check that out. But now it's time to revisit what is without a doubt the most hated and disparaged 1D solo album, Liam Payne's debut, LP1. And when I say hated, I mean hated. People do not like this album at all. Thankfully, I am more of a pop fan at heart, so I still had decent expectations going in, so let's just dive in. What are my thoughts on LP1? Let's find out as I review it track by track. This record had a very bizarre pre-release schedule, a lot of singles, most of which I'm pretty sure weren't meant to be on this record, and all except one are tacked onto the back end, almost like bonus tracks. As per usual, we will start with the singles, so those bonus tracks will start the review, which there are 8 of them. The first being Liam's debut single, Strip That Down, featuring Quavo, and for context, this song came out 2.5 years before the album saw its official release. Yeah. Anyway, the song, I can't hate it if I tried to. This is the exact type of song I expected Liam to make in his solo career. It's got this springy bass melody, smooth snaps, these quiet yet still cheesy club chants, which I actually never really noticed until deeply analyzing the track for this review. Doesn't make it any worse, but I'm likely not going to be able to unhear it. Liam's vocals on the track are very solid, they're simple, effortlessly charismatic. Lyrically, it should be self-explanatory, though I always felt the line about him being free out of One Direction felt a bit tasteless considering the supposed bond the members had, even though I'm fully aware it probably wasn't all sunshine and rainbows in other matters. Quavo's verse is a very brief 8 bars. I wish he was on here more because he really suits the instrumental. All things considered, I like this track a lot, one of the best singles, easily. The second single, Get Low featuring Zedd, is probably one of the safest things Liam released in the build-up for this record. I almost don't feel like it's necessary to even talk about this song. You could probably imagine what it is given the two artists in question. It's a bouncy, upbeat synth-pop track, microscopically engineered for dance clubs, parties, what have you. The bass isn't as strong as I would have personally liked, not necessarily in its impact, but I just don't think it's as potent as it could be. The synth melody that twirls along with it is far more captivating. And Liam's vocals are good, he wasn't gonna mess the song up if he tried, and the lyrics are simple, repetitive, slightly erotic drivel. One thing I do want to mention is this little snap you hear all the time in this song sounds exactly like the effect Nintendo uses when you snap in a Joy-Con to a Switch. You will not unhear it if you go back to that song. As it stands, it's fine, it's tolerable, it's inoffensive. The third single, Bedroom Floor, is a single I've always been iffy on. Not my favorite, but by no means the worst. For one, I really enjoyed the subtle electronic kind of house beat of the song, simple bass drum and a warm twinkly synth gracefully dancing across it, only gaining an extra snap for the drop of the chorus, which I think is executed quite well. Maybe could have used a bit of extra bass, but the instrumental is smooth, which works well for a track of this manner. And these lyrics, which seem to focus on a conflicting on and off relationship and how they just can't seem to forget and call the whole thing off. It's not stellar writing by any means, but for this style of track, whatever. My issues with the song exist solely in the structure of the track and Liam vocally. I find the repetition on the pre-chorus to be especially lazy and irritating in spots, and the falsettos dollop throughout the entire chorus get pretty obnoxious well before the song is over. Again, not the worst, but far from the best. The fourth single, For You, featuring Rita Ora, actually managed to grow on me over the years. I gotta start off by mentioning the clean production, the usage of chillier synths over the warmer plucky guitar, and the punchy but not overblown chorus. I'm also way more fond of Rita's vocals over Liam's. I'm not sure if it's in the way he's mixed, but Rita just seems to overpower him outside of his own verse. It feels like it should be more of a Rita Ora track featuring Liam Payne, but her vocals in the chorus are very nice, very catchy as well. One thing I'm not crazy about is just how the track doesn't have much of an identity. On a structural, conceptual level, it's one of the more standard and basic singles released prior to the album. That could be explained due to this album's connection as a soundtrack single to 50 Shades Freed, but it doesn't help it stand out betwixt the other singles. All in all, it's fine, it's grown on me, but still not one of my favorites. The fifth single, Familiar, featuring J Balvin, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, is a reggaeton pop fusion track. A song that I actually used to really enjoy, but I'm not gonna lie, it's grown off me a bit. The instrumental of the track is absolutely stellar though. Despite me not being the biggest fan of the cookie cutter instrumentation and rhythm of reggaeton, fusing it with some light acoustics, shimmering synths, and warm pop production catapulted to a higher level. I also find the vocal melody pretty satisfying, even if the repetition of the chorus does get a bit irritating, but Liam's second verse with the extra vocal runs is pretty nice. One thing I'm not crazy about, though, is the chemistry between Liam and J Balvin, pretty much being non-existent. J Balvin's deep, richer tone with Liam's higher, slightly nasally vocals is not a perfect pairing, although J Balvin's verse is really nice, especially with the instrumentation getting stripped to just a thumping bass. A solid song, I could still have it on and enjoy it, but I definitely enjoyed it more a few years ago. The sixth single, Polaroid, with Jonas Blue and Lennon Stella, was probably the single I listened to the least out of all these singles, mostly because I didn't expect it to actually show up on the record. It's actually just credited under English dance producer Jonas Blue, which was the same situation with the Z track, Get Low, but at least that track had a solid punchy groove. This one sadly doesn't. It's extremely sanitary and polished. The general vibe of the track, all the synths, all the melodies get pretty much smothered by the overblown hissing and rattling of hi-hat, while the actual punch of the bass is very weak. Does not make for the prettiest combination for a dance track, but at least both Liam and Lennon Stella utilize their voices equally well enough, and certainly have the best chemistry displayed on the record, but I just find the actual musical side of the track to be a dud. The seventh single, the opener. Hey guys, Editing Keegan here. Just want to get on here and say that quickly. While I did literally just say that this song is the opener, if you go to streaming, you will find that that isn't actually the case, as there is a song with Liam featuring on Alesso's track Midnight that is clipped to the top of the track list. I did not talk about it in this video for two reasons. One, it's boring, and two, it came out 4 months after the record dropped initially, meaning it's just there to beef up the track list. Don't worry, it's not a crucial track to listen to, and it wouldn't affect my rating regardless if it was actually on the record. Anyway, I'll get you back to the video now. And what I believe was actually the first official single of the album, Stack It Up, featuring A Boogie with the Hoodie, which is yet another track that has actually fallen off me, though I do hold this one a little bit closer than the other singles that dropped off of my favorites. For one, this gives a similar vibe to Strip That Down, specifically in the smoother, more hip-hop focused groove, even though this one has a far weaker punch than that lead-off single, especially with the one-note synth melody. Liam's vocals also give me that Strip That Down vibe pretty much throughout the entire song. Good bit of charisma, even if the lyrics are just mindless money worshipping. What this track does have over Strip That Down, though, is an actual decent rap feature. I've always been partial to A Boogie over the years for his unique voice, good grasp of melody, and a solid flow, and he delivers all of those here. Overall, I do enjoy this one, and certainly is one of the better singles of the bunch. And the eighth and final single, the closer, All I Want parentheses for Christmas, which yes is an actual original Christmas song, and as expected for an album closer, it is on the slower end. A piano and string driven ballad with these somber lyrics about trying to mend this relationship and phrasing it as a Christmas wish. As much as the song is sentimental and melancholic, I don't think it works well in the context of the record that is so driven on lyrics about sex and money and superfluous fame. To suddenly hear a track this earnest, serious, and real, ironically enough, kind of makes it feel fake. I think the song would have had a much stronger impact had it been a standalone single. Having such a slow track tacked onto this record doesn't leave the best taste in my mouth at the end of the day. On its own though, I guess it's a solid enough song. Now for the rest of the tracks, or the core album I suppose, starting with Remember, which I actually believe to be fairly solid, though it is not without its flaws. Let me just start out by saying that out of every track I've talked about so far, this one has one of the stalest instrumentals on the album, especially during the first verse with the most cookie-cutter guitar plucking I've heard on a pop album in a while, only really enhanced by warm waves of synths, decent kicks of bass, and Liam himself who delivers a decent enough vocal performance. I particularly find the melody of the chorus nice, and the lyrics about struggling to forget this partner after giving so much to remember them by is fairly okay, a bit shallow, but there's not really any lyrical duds, which can't be said about later tracks, so I'll take it. Not bad, but not a stellar song. Heart Made Break, which holy shit, this song is just a pile of nothing. For one, it's hardly a song, doesn't even see 2 minutes long, and is the shortest track on the album. Another thing, this is just so forgettable. The instrumental is a safe pop trap beat, ticking hi-hat and bass with decent synth waves that stay pretty stagnant for the entire track. There's no explosive punch for the chorus, no bridge for that matter as well, and Liam's vocals are fairly one note. I wouldn't say it's a complete flop. I think the melody is the highest part of the song, especially for the chorus. It's catchy enough and I've had it stuck in my head a few times. It's the sole memorable feature of the song. Outside of that, there is nothing noteworthy here. Hips Don't Lie consider this album's core tracklist trend of generic moody pop songs with trap embellishments. Though I would like to say this one's probably one of the better ones, but that's hardly a resounding compliment. One, this track has such a flaccid groove. The synths are very murky and cloudy, trying to play to this atmospheric vibe. The hits of bass are negligible, and the rattling trap drum somehow manages to make the track feel emptier. I think the soul-saving grace of the track is Liam himself. I think his vocals are catered to the beat well enough, though the falsettos in the second verse certainly aren't the most digestible, but I don't mind the simple melodies throughout the rest of the song. Despite that, really not one I'm all that eager to revisit. Tell Your Friends is just another devoid wasteland of a track. This one is especially flat. The closest thing we get to texture on the song is in the form of some of the softest perambulating synths trying their best to hold up the rest of the instrumental, and they just can't hold it up. The percussion is nearly non-existent, the actual kick and bass are so limp, and there's this odd, almost comical, bone-rattling, clicking sound that seems like it's trying to be a percussive element, but it's just more distracting than anything. Unlike most of the tracks prior, I'm actually not all that fond of the melody here. I think its build to the chorus is especially flimsy, and Liam's vocals trying to croon and deliver a colorless rap verse over this sparse skeletal pop beat just feels lifeless. Easily one of the lowlights of the record. Say It All, on the other hand, is probably one of the highlights from this string of core record tracks, but I still wouldn't call it a great song. It's a bit more smooth, slow, and R&B driven compared to the vapid, moody pop of the earlier tracks. I find the clicky percussion and gentle layers of synth to be fairly generic, but then the chorus comes in and strips all that away to a somber piano is really where the track starts to shine. There's just something in that chorus, whether it's the tone, the simple yet serious lyrics, or the way Liam sings it, whatever it may be, I just really find that chorus to be captivating. Speaking of Liam himself, his singing and the melodies in particular throughout the entire track are pretty solid. Yeah, this one's a bit of a sleeper hit. I'll take it. Rude Hours is rough, to say the least. The instrumentation is probably some of the dullest on the album. It's pretty much your dime a dozen trap beat, but with little more pop sheen in the slightly brighter synth and more buoyant bass. There's really not much of note there. Also, what the hell is up with Liam's vocals on this one? He almost sounds like airier, a bit higher pitched and wispier. For a track that's trying to be a blatant sex jam, that's not the kind of vocals I really want to hear. And yes, blatant sex jam is not an exaggeration, as this has some of the most disgusting lyrics on the record. It's not like the confident, suave, dance floor sexy of a song like Strip That Down. It's blunt to an uncomfortable degree and just makes me want to skip right as soon as that first verse starts. And yet he manages to do worse later on the record, but we'll ride that train wreck when we get there. Definitely one of the worst here. Just get it out. Live Forever featuring Cheat Codes, which actually was a single but just released the same day as the album dropped. Anyway, this track is far and away the most upbeat and radio-friendly track of these core album songs. Expectedly so, given Cheat Codes' history as electronic music producers. It makes sense why this was a single. That being said, I do wish it hit a bit harder. The production reeks of 2016-2017 cliche pop radio, with the slow verses building to a muted chorus, followed by a drop in the post-chorus, and the drop isn't even all that good. Hell, Chainsmokers have had better drops than this. I think the one thing I enjoy about the track is Liam's vocals and the melodies. As usual, he does well enough with what he's given, and while I may not be as fond of the rest of the song, it's not really bad. I'd accept it over most of the nonsense on this album, so I'll take that for what you will. Weekend is a track I feel pretty similarly to Say It All, in that I think this one kinda works. Of course, it's still soaked in this mellow nature with muggy synths and melodramatic vocals, showing Liam really forcing this deeper, more grave vocal tone, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It plays well to the vibe of the track. The melody here is pretty solid as well, especially the pre-chorus over the quaking rumbling of the bass, and the drop flavored with this overly synthetic guitar drowned in this chilly reverb is a decent way for the track to reach its apex. The lyrics here are also pretty alright, and in moments play well to the sound of the track. Of course, there's still the overtly sexual moments, which I think are the weaker parts, but this track shows a relationship that has dissolved, and while both parties have expressed a desire for flings, this shows Liam really reminiscing over his actions and focuses on the mournful, almost cynical mental state he's in now. Honestly, another sleeper hit. This one works. And finally, Both Ways is one of the biggest duds I've ever heard. This track is pure unfiltered garbage. Let me start with the less controversial side of the song, being the music. It's a moody R&B beat with a kinda pop electronic element in the chorus, a drop as well. It's standard, doesn't really have too much flavor like some of the tracks prior, but I wouldn't call it the worst instrumental on the record. Plus, Liam sounds fine vocally. His cleaner delivery on the chorus is good, and the half-rapped verse and refrain are not as good, but I also wouldn't say it's bad. No, the real dud here is the lyrics, and I'm just gonna rip the bandage off and say this song is about how Liam's girl is bisexual and likes it both ways. I'll say right now, I don't think this song was written with bad intentions in mind. I think the accusations of Liam being homophobic because of this song are way out of line, but I also think the fetishization of one's sexuality is just gross, and I just don't feel comfortable listening to a song like this. I wouldn't particularly say I'm offended by lyrics, since I wouldn't particularly say I'm offended by the lyrics since the song doesn't really relate to me, but it's just not a sexy song anyway. Literally, you want a sexy song by Liam Payne? Just skip this one and go right to Strip That Down, which is the next song in the track list. I know I'm going way deeper into this than I should have, but I'm sorry, this song has always hit the wrong note for me. He could have changed like 3 or 4 particular lines and this would have been an inoffensive pop R&B song, but the focus on the both ways element just makes me feel like I need to give my ears a thorough cleansing. I get why so many people don't like it. I'm fully with them in that crowd. Overall, there's no question about it, LP1 is the worst album affiliated with One Direction, and hell, this album is basically carried by the bonus track singles. At absolute best, this album shows Liam being a charismatic figure ready to pump out smooth, sexy club jams, of which he does 3 at most out of 17. For the bulk of this tracklist, we either get generic dance pop, dime a dozen R&B cuts, and mostly unremarkable lyrics. I just don't see how anyone could willingly listen to this, especially since Zayn has been doing the R&B thing longer and better than him, and I also find the pop cuts Zayn does to be of better quality as well. I believe Liam's expected to come back soon, and if that's the case, I really hope the new singles and record are an improvement over this, but I can't imagine that being too hard given how low the bar was set with LP1 here. I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.